questions or comments about technical problems or other matters, please write them in the chat box and we'll try to deal with them as they come in. At this point, I will introduce our student moderators, Molly Brown and Esperanza Herrera Moore. They'll explain the structure of the event and then introduce our candidates.
Hello, my name is Molly Brown. I am the freshman class president at West Albany High School, where I also participate in speech and debate.
Hello, I'm Esperanza Herrera Moore. I'm from South and I'm a junior. I participate in a lot of things within junior class president, the student representative on the school board, so this will be interesting to see, and along with speech and debate and other things. Thank you.
We want to thank all of our candidates for their willingness to serve our schools and for joining us for tonight's forum. To begin, we will have all of our candidates introduce themselves and tell us why they are running for election. There is a 2-minute time limit on these introductions, and a warning will be given when there are 10 seconds left. The order of introductions is alphabetical, by each of the 3 zones being contested in the school board elections. The process and order for further responses will be explained as we go. First are the candidates running for election in Zone 1. Mr. Frank Bricker, please introduce yourself and tell us why you want to be on the school board.
Hi, and thank you for having me. My name is Frank Bricker. I have been was on the school board for approximately 25 years. I had to leave the school board 2 years ago because of my wife's illness, because I had to take care of her and didn't have time to do my school board job the way I thought it should be done. She passed away in December, so now I have the time to do it again. One of the main reasons that I'm running for the board, other than the fact that I like the work, is that with the turnover we're staying with the board, with only 2 board members staying on, we will have almost no experience on the board. The 2 board members, though doing a good job, only have 2 years apiece on the board, and I can bring back 25 years of board experience. 23 years of that I did the bargaining for the district, and we'll have both contracts coming up in next spring to be negotiated, and I believe that I can help immensely with that process, having been a part of that for so many years. We have a great relationship with our association, and part of that comes through the quality of our bargaining, and that's something that I can work on and be, I believe, very good at. I enjoy the service of the school board because I see it as a service to the community and to the next generation. Excuse me, the next generation. I think my 2 minutes are up, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bricker. Ms. Clarice Law, thank you for joining us. It's your turn to introduce yourself and tell us why you want to be on the school board.
Hi, my name is Clarice Law. I'm running for Zone 1. One of my priorities for being on the school board is that I want to make sure that everything we do is a benefit for the students. If it's not a benefit for the students, we need to go back to the drawing board. I do know that Lynn County did not print a voters pamphlet, so I would like to read what I put into Benton counties because it pretty much describes why I want to do what I'm doing. While working for GAPS, which I worked for 3.5 years and volunteered in the PTP officer position for 9, I witnessed firsthand the struggles and concerns of both staff and parents on a regular basis. As I encountered these issues, I came to understand that looking outside the box for solutions became crucial. I do not intend to simply accept standard answers to how our goals are accomplished without sufficient coherent explanations. Thus, I intend to ask the difficult questions so we can improve and progress our district. If given the honor to serve on the board, I will strive to support and represent the students of our district. I feel this is a priority for any school board member. Having no agenda of my own except to continue to improve our school district will allow me to keep an open mind and listen to all viewpoints. A motivation behind running for the position is that I've always been someone who didn't want to just complain about someone. I wanted and highlight problems, but I wanted to come to the table with a solution and work that solution. Educating our children is a very difficult and complex job, which requires hard work. I look forward to the opportunity to be able to work with our growing community and accomplish even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, from Zone 1, we have Mr. Brad Wilson. Thanks for joining us. This is your opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us why you would like to be on the school board.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brad Wilson. I came to Albany in 1972, where I started fifth grade at Liberty Elementary, and I graduated from West Albany High School in 1980. 1981 to 85, I attended University of Oregon, where I got a degree in marketing and business. In 1987, I married my wife, Carla, and we had 2 children, both of them born in Albany and graduated from Albany High School. In 1991, we bought the Bark Place, and we still operate it to this day in Albany and Corvallis. In 2005, we started Better Portable Toilets. This community has been absolutely great to me, and I wanted to give something back, and that's why I'm running for school board. This is my first political adventure, as I've spent the last 30 years raising my family and running our businesses. As I looked at what I could do to help, it occurred to me that there needs to be greater transparency so that parents and students know what the plan is to get the kids back in schools full time. There needs to be a clear plan for quarantining only students that have had direct exposure to COVID. The current plan is a shotgun approach that's confusing and frustrating. Students need the opportunity not only to attend college, but also the trades as well. Albany needs skilled workers desperately, and our schools can provide a pathway to these high-paying local jobs. Students also feel need to learn personal finance in order to avoid crippling debt. In these charged times, we all need to take a breath, clear away the political noise and personal agendas, and we should always, always put the students' needs first. Thank you.
Next, we have our candidates from Zone 2. Mr. Roger Nyquist, please introduce yourself and tell us why you would want to be on the school board.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the League of Women's Voters. Can you hear me okay? I was born in Albany, went to Grand Prairie Grade School, was my first scholastic experience as a first grader. I thought I would go to school and be the fastest boy in my class. Little did I know that there was a girl named April who outran all of us. My experience going through the Albany schools was fantastic. The time of my life, I've been a lifelong Albany resident. It's a great place to grow up, to live, to raise a family. And I think our kids deserve the same. The last year has been hard for everybody. I've watched the school board try to implement COVID restrictions and to get kids an education. At times, I think it's been a struggle for them. I've watched that. And so I was interested in who might step up and run for school board. The filing opened February 6th. No one had filed on February 18th when I got a recruitment letter like many of us did. I think almost all of us parents did from the district. And I just felt like that was the time for me. I needed to step up for the community. I come with 20 years experience running a public entity in this community. I know how to do that. I think that experience will be valuable if I'm elected to the school board.
The other candidate running for Zone 2, the Zone 2 position is Mr. Willard Sheppy, whose turn it is to introduce himself and tell us why he wants to be on the school board. Mr. Sheppy, you're muted.
There we go. All right. Thank you. So I was saying that I'm excited that we have a lot of longtime Albany residents. I grew up in Albany. I actually grew up in Zone 2. I went to Periwinkle Elementary and Calpullia Middle School and then South Albany High School. I have 3 kids, 2 of which they go to Oak. And I'm married to a lovely wife who has her master's in education. I'm a small business owner. I run Albany Acupuncture Clinic. But before all that, I was a mediator, and I worked in Lynn and County courthouses. I worked with the juvenile department, and I worked with families to help them resolve conflict. Just like everyone has said, like last year was rough. Not only with dealing with like loss of work, loss of income, but just struggling with the online school. And in that time when we should have been coming together and supporting each other, it felt like we were falling apart. What we need is leadership that can really remind us of the humanity, can help us see our common needs, and can help us work together. I remember I have this memory of walking to a South Albany football game and just feeling connected to the school and having this larger sense of connected to the community. And I want that for my kids, and I want that for all kids. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but because that's how you build better solutions. No one likes it when you come in and you just tell them what to do, right? They want to have input. They want to have a diversity of ideas. When we listen first and when we talk to each other, that's how we create long-term solutions that will last. And I know this is difficult and it sounds kind of idealistic, but it's really what needs to happen. And my skills are really set me up as the best candidate to build community around our schools to help us move forward. The school district is only good as the decisions that they make. And we need to really work together as a unit, focusing on, again, building community and getting our kids back in school full time.
Time's up.
The third position being contested in these special elections is one of the 2 at-large positions of the school board. First, we have Miss Allison Ecker to introduce herself and tell us why she wants to be on the school board.
Hi, well, thank you for having me here tonight. And, so I was born and raised in Albany, like many others, and I'm a proud graduate of South Albany High School. I live in Albany with my husband and our 2 children, who are 7 and 10. I was born with the profound hearing loss, and the audiologist told my mother that I would never develop intelligible speech. My mom, who was a retired elementary school teacher, was not going to accept that answer, and she advocated for me with everything she had so that I could excel academically in school with language therapy and an individual education plan. I was mainstreamed from elementary through high school, excuse me, where I was the only other deaf or hard of hearing student, with the exception of my sister, who was also born with a hearing loss. I attended the University of Oregon, where I majored in ethnic studies. Back then, no one knew what that was. My dad questioned my ability to get a job in that field. Well, I'm happy to say that I'm currently employed. My family lived in Mexico City for 2 years while my husband completed his master's degree in mechanical engineering. It was during that time that I decided I wanted to become a lawyer. We moved back to the US and I attended Willamette Law School, finishing amid the start of the pandemic. It wasn't easy doing it as a law student parent and once again as the only deaf or hard of hearing student, but I worked hard and advocated for my needs as a student with a disability. Both my husband and I place a high value on education, and we are proud of the example we have set for our children as students ourselves. Our hope and wish is for our children is to raise them in a school environment that values and teaches bilingualism and biculturalism because they are Mexican American. We would like our school district to reflect these values and the full diversity of the community, so all our students are included.
Thank you, Ms. Ecker. Our next candidate is Mr. Peter J. Morris. Please introduce yourself and tell us why you would want to be on the school board.
Okay, my name is Pete Morris. I'm running for Greater Albany Public School Board position. I attended GAPS K through 12 schools, and I grew up in a working class family. I consider myself very lucky to have a very supportive family that did not limit my dreams. Equally important in my life were the teachers, coaches, school administrators, and countless others at GAPS. These mentors and role models held me to high expectations. Furthermore, they helped me realize all the opportunity available to me if I worked hard while in high school. In 1987, I received an appointment to the United States Naval Academy, where I received an incredible education and continued to learn important life lessons. After graduation from Annapolis, I went to flight school. I've been fortunate to fly all over the world and had the honor to be the commanding officer of a naval aviation squadron. I returned to Albany 8+ years ago to raise my family, work, and be part of a community. Since being home, I have become very concerned about the direction and policies in our district. One poor policy example is the difference between middle school and high school grades. Middle school should be preparing our students for high school, and district policy does not do that. Many current policies in our district just do not make sense. I believe our school district leadership is making important decisions behind closed doors without community input or while ignoring majority input. Education is the greatest equalizer for our youth. I do not believe lowering the bar so all can pass is the correct direction for our district. I believe strongly that we need to empower our students. We have amazing teachers, coaches, counselors, and school administrators. We need to empower these talented professionals to prepare our youth so that they have a better chance to achieve success. I'm running for GAP school board position because I want all our youth to have the best possible chance for their success. Thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Our final candidate to introduce herself and explain why she wants to be on the school board is Miss Denise Newton Vasquez.
Yeah, hi, I'm Danae Newton Vasquez. I grew up in Prineville, Oregon, in a blue collar home, and spent my early childhood having conversations with horses in the field while my parents worked as ranch hands. My school board run motives are really simple. I want to be an advocate for our schools, just like my teachers and coaches were advocates for me. These influences completely changed my life. They helped me realize that I needed and could go to college. As a first generation college student, I think it was their incredible impact on my life that moved me to become a teacher and a volleyball coach. As a parent to 3 young girls, 2 of whom attend dual immersion here in Albany, I am also moved to advocate for their education. I think the pandemic has evoked the flaws in our system, and I know my experience as an educator and in administration gives me a unique understanding of what the school district needs. It's been heart-wrenching to help my own struggling children, and it's been heartbreaking to see how many of our students are impacted because they're missing the structure and support that my own kids have had having 2 teachers in the house. It feeds my own guilt that I'm not ever quite doing enough. And I think there's a lot of parents and caregivers who have felt this loss as well. And it's time for me to give back to my community. I think it's important to have a teacher perspective on the board in regards to policy, which is how we protect kids, how we serve our schools, so we can take the flaws of our school system that have been exposed and in this pandemic and utilize the incredible new district resources our students and educators have gained and be better than back to normal when we return. And as your school board director, I will be serving as an educator, parent, and advocate for every student. Your kids are my kids. Molly, let's see.
Candidates will now answer questions that were written by students in classes. The candidates from each of the 3 zones will receive the same sets of questions. There's a 90-second time limit for each answer, and a warning will be given when there's 10 seconds left. The order in which candidates will answer the questions will change throughout the forum. Zone 1, question 1. What are the main things you would like to change about the school district? Ms. Clarice Law, if you would like to answer first. I think you're muted, by the way.
Thank you. Hi, one thing that I would like to change that I think is a priority is the COVID situation, how we are handling it, how we are looking at it, how we address what the rules are as far as guidance goes. I believe there's some things that we tend to just accept and not question. And I think we need to question for all our students. I think we need to, as someone that was a behavior specialist in the school, I think we really need to work on behavior. It not only affects the kids that have the behavior issues, they need help. We need to find the root cause. We need to know what is driving their behaviors, but it affects the classrooms. It affects the teachers. Students have problems learning when other kids are disrupting. They need the help to have them not interrupting, have them out of the class until they're able to be in the classroom. I would also like to look at the health of our district and see the change in there, that we listen to the staff and then we listen to the building administrators. The staff is what is most important to the education of our kids. And we need our building administrators to be able to back them up. We need the district to stand behind them and help them out. And I think that's my bell.
Thank you. Brad Wilson, if you would like to answer.
Oh, you're muted too.
I think you're muted.
There we go. Is that better? Am I there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. One of the things that I like to see change in the school district is to make sure that we're transparent. A lot of the decisions coming down from the administration seem convoluted and not clearly thought out, and it's difficult to follow the reasoning as to why they made the decisions they made. I'd like to see there be a clear understanding of why we're doing what we're doing so that parents and students can have a great idea. For example, I talked about a little bit the COVID quarantine. They'll oftentimes right now send entire classes home as opposed to the people who were most closely associated with it. I want to see a path to the trades. There's many students can go to college and many cannot. And we have a great need in this community for trade work, for electricians, plumbers, welders. We've got Lynn Benton Community College here that's able to teach them to do that. I'd like to see us also get a path to businesses so that we can place these students in the jobs of their choice. I also want to see the kids get in school full time. 5 days a week, they should be in the classroom learning, getting fully immersed in the education, having time to be with their peers, to learn to socialize, and to get the full high school and school experience that they will need to go on in the rest of the world.
Thank you. Mr. Frank Ricker, if you would like to answer.
Sorry, mute button wasn't unmuting. One of the main problems we have in the schools that I think we need to really be working on is getting the parents more involved in their kids' education. One of the areas that we know as an indicator for quality or for finishing school is the education level of the parents. We need to be working to get the parents who haven't gone to college to be far more interested in their students' education and to learn how they can help their kids. The students spend most of their lives at home with their families, and we only have them for about 6.5 hours a day for 9 months. We need the education to be ongoing all year long. If we can get the parents involved in the education of their students, then the students will have a far better chance to succeed. We need the parents to understand what their students' choices are. That yes, college is an option, but like my son, he wasn't interested in college, so he did the trade route. He now works at the welding department at Lynn Benton Community College. We need to have the parents involved.
Time's up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, zone 2, question 1. If the boundaries for the 2 high schools are to be changed, how would you decide what changes to make? First candidate would be Roger Nyquist.
how would they reach? I would rely on the people who studied and analyzed that data and try to do what is best for the community, just straight up. And you'd have to absolutely listen to parents, to students, to the community, and try to do it in a way that there's buy-in from everybody. Would not leave it undone without reaching consensus, no matter how long we had to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyquist. Now, I'm really hoping I'm saying your last name right. Chevy, will you answer that question?
There we go. I'm unmuted. You said it correctly, Sheppy. So Roger and I are in full agreement. If we're going to redistrict the zones for the high school, with all sort of, anytime you are making a decision, the first thing that you need to do is listen. We need to do outreach to the community to hear the needs of the parents, and do surveys and do communication groups on Facebook. That's the first step. First, we always need to listen. And then you consult the experts. We talk to the people in other schools that have done rezoning, and we figure out what they would advise. And then at last, we talk among ourselves as a school board and to reach consensus. So I would 100%, that's how you make correct decisions, is you got to have community buy-in. You got to consult experts on areas that you're not clear with. And then we need to discuss as a school board. Again, transparency of being clear with the process, being able to give parents a clear timeline of what to expect, give the communities heads up and notice when they have options to communicate, and have a diversity of ways to communicate, both in English, both in Spanish, both online, both in writing. The more ways that we can reach out to the community in different avenues. Working families, it's hard because sometimes you're not able to go to events because you're busy working. So having as much option is going. Right. Is that time?
Yes, time's up.
Thanks.
At large, question 1. Peter Morse, how would you balance COVID safety in the fall with the students' need to be physically together in school?
Well, first, I would say the most important thing, other than safety, is get our kids back into school. Our kids need that interaction. They need those hours in school. They need to have the role models and mentors of their teachers and administrators. They need their sports. We do as the CDC says. Right now, I think the problem, and it's been alluded to before, is Albany's not really following what other districts are following. Why do we take a whole class out when they haven't broken the rule of the 6 feet? I don't understand that. We would have about a third of the number gone that we would now if we did it that way. Also, obviously, everyone getting their immunizations, getting their COVID shots would be great. That would help us maintain everybody in school. I think that's very important. I think that we have to weigh and balance the idea that kids being in school has to be a top priority, just below safety. And right now, I don't think we're doing that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. If Miss Newton Vasquez, how would you balance COVID safety in the fall with the students' need to be physically together in school?
Yeah, well, schools are open as of last week, which is awesome. Students are in classrooms with their teachers face to face, and I think protocols in Albany schools are pretty tight and really effective. And it's what I've seen is the district has pretty deliberately planned for a safe return. Transmission rates are really low because of the protocols, and when people follow the guidelines outside of the classroom, it'll ensure a safe inside the classroom because protocols are in place in our schools, have made schools safe, and will limit the need for quarantine. So I think as board members, I'm hopeful we can kind of focus on the new resources that the bond has allowed And I think the district's been pretty clear in saying we're sticking with what Lynn County Public Health is saying, consulting with them on their quarantine process, that our schools will remain open and full of kids that are delighted to be back in the classroom. So I think that being mindful of the protocols when we are at home will help ensure that the quarantining students continues to go down as we get better at this.
Thank you. Lastly, Allison Ecker, how would you balance COVID safety in the fall with students need to be physically together in school?
Okay, so that's a good question. So I think, you know, it's really all about weighing the risks and the advantages. And we've seen a lot of evidence out there that at this point, the disadvantages of keeping the kids out of school far outweigh them going back to school, and that as long as we're following the proper safety protocols, that there is actually a very low danger to the children. So I think that, you know, again, to emphasize what others have already said, you know, we need to make sure that people are getting their vaccinations, people are wearing their masks, and you know, following the safety protocols so that our kids can stay in school. And this also, you know, extends to people's outside of school activities as well. The safer we are outside of the schools, then the more we are protecting our children's ability to continue attending school.
Thank you, Ms. Ecker. Zone 1, question 2. Do you think the curriculum should be more focused on character development than on testing? If so, how would you work towards this change? Mr. Brad Wilson, will you go first?
So, let's see. Okay. So repeat the question again, a curricular development or grades?
Do you think the curriculum should be more focused on character development than on testing? If so, how would you work towards this change?
Well, both are important. We need to have great character development. We want to make great people. It's part of the learning experience. It's why the kids need to be in school, so that they can learn to socialize and get along with each other and develop their characters. They also have to meet the real world. You have to go out there and be able to do testing, to be able to, when you go to college, be able to meet the professor's expectations and understand what he wants and return that information. You also have to be able to, when you're employed, be able to meet the tests of everyday work. Those people are going to want to see that you can, you know, not only have great character, but also do the work and do what needs done. So it really is going to be a balance of both. That's really the best methodology to get to the best possible outcome for the long run. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Frank Bricker, do you think the curriculum should be more focused on character development than on testing? If so, how would you work towards this change?
Well, I don't see it as an either or. We can do both, and we have been doing both. As Brad said, the kids need to come out of school with both the academic and the character traits that will make them successful in life. The testing is important because it's how we create a standard for quality of education in our students. Without the testing, we cannot know whether the kids are meeting the standards that they need. The character education part, we've been working on that in GAPS for over 20 years with the character education curriculums. We need to continue that and possibly to reinforce them, but we cannot jump from one to the other. We cannot say, hey, we're going to, lower our education standards so that we can have a higher spend more time on character education. They're both important, and we need to do both of them well.
Thank you, Mr. Bricker. Miss Clarice Law, do you think the curriculum should be more focused on character development than on testing? If so, how would you work towards this change?
Well, I agree with Brad and Frank on this, that we need to have both. I do have some concerns about standardized testing. As a person that worked in the schools, I saw what happened when we taught to the test. We spent time getting them ready for the test, whereas I think it should have been more on what was actually the curriculum for the classrooms. Character is built in everyday part of life. You're taught that by your teachers, you're taught that by your parents, you're taught that by the students you're around. We need to let these kids have that happen so that they can learn it from all avenues. Getting out in the real world is what we are trying to prepare them for. And yes, testing is part of that, is a big part of that. And I agree with that. The standardized is the one that I have some concerns about. And I believe the testing of subjects to what curriculum is what needs to happen. And the character of the kids is part of the community, so we all need to be involved in that.
Thank you, Ms. Law. Zone 2, question 2. Is it true we might start the next school year in early August? Are you in favor of this? Mr. Willard Sheppy, if you would answer first.
I'm not in favor of changing the school calendar at this moment. What we need right now is stability. As working class families and myself, I think we've dealt with enough changes. We just need to get back to the routine, the stability. Being able to have stability in our family is the foundation that kids can build an education upon. Every time you change things, it's more stressful, and the kids feel that stressful. So I'm not in favor of changing the school calendar. I think in the future, there's definitely options, and there has been research that shows that having an alternative calendar may be beneficial, but that is a conversation that is not important at the moment. What's important at the moment is what everyone has talked about, getting our kids back into school, building a stable routine that our families can depend on and that our kids can rely on so that they can start learning. And then we need to focus on the education gap, as some kids are going to come in feeling prepared and some kids are going to be coming in kind of feeling lost. We need to do that by focusing first of younger kids, keeping the class sizes small, making sure that they have counseling and support staff. As we get into the older grades, definitely focusing on career, technology education, and preparing them for the workforce is important. So these are our main challenges coming forward. Talking about the calendar is something that can happen later, and I'm open to hearing suggestions and thoughts on that, but it's not anything that that I think most families can handle at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheppy. Mr. Nyquist, is it true we might start the next school year in early August? Are you in favor of this?
I don't think it's true, because I think that the school board eventually decided to leave it the same. I could be wrong there, but that's as I followed it. So, I think the conversation was born out of concern, genuine concern about where we are with kids right now. This last year has been tough on them scholastically, emotionally, socially. And we do need to figure out where we really are and establish a plan to go forward so we can not just recover from this virus as a community and public health way, but our kids and how this has happened and how we attempt to make this right with them. So I think the district did a good job last fall in doing some baseline testing from an outside party. I think we need to come in and do that again now before the end of the school year, so we can address it. I think there are a lot of fear out there about where we really are with our kids as a community, and we need to establish where we are and move forward from there. I don't think moving the school year up solves that problem. I do think that for fifth graders going into sixth grade and coming high school kids, that first year freshmen, they might need another week or two of time of adjustment. And we need to look at that in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyquist. At large, question 2. What changes, if any, do you think the district needs to make to ensure equal opportunity for students? Miss Danae Newton Vasquez, will you go first?
Yeah, when you're talking about equal opportunity, you're talking about that every student has access to the same high quality education, not just students who have the support and structure at home. So at South Albany, I think growing something like AVID, I was an elective teacher there for several years. And for listeners who don't know what AVID is, it's a system that builds equity by analyzing data that shows us as a school district what kids in our district need structure and support to be able to have access to a college or career path, who don't have the same access as their peers. At South, it is students that are first generation college students, students that are learning English, students of color who need that access most. That's our demographic. AVID is a great example of a system that's built an equitable learning environment that gives tools to educators, building leaders, students to be able to build a path for every single child. And what it also shows is you can see as an example here that this system in turn builds high quality learning spaces for all of the kids because the instructional practices are best practices that enrich classrooms, whether it's for intervention or advanced placement. So the process of building equity then centers the kid, builds empathy so that students from all different backgrounds can come to the same spaces and have a shared path toward whatever is next.
Thank you, Ms. Newton Vasquez. Ms. Allison Ecker, what changes, if any, do you think the district needs to make to ensure equal opportunity for students?
Okay, so I think that it's really important to make sure that we make all of our school district activities as accessible as possible. And some examples of that would be making sure that there is Spanish translation and interpretation of, what information that's posted on the website, on the school district website, or at events such as this, making sure that there's captioning for online forums. And this goes not just for students, but also for parents of students as well, so that we can make sure that we are meeting students' needs instead of waiting for them to make those needs known and putting the burden on them to advocate for themselves. So I think that as a school district, we really need to be thinking proactively rather than reactively and waiting to hear these comments and experiences from students that are not being included. And then another thing that I would like to see in the school district is more diverse representation among the teachers and staff. Students to see people that look like themselves, because teachers and role models are teachers and administrators are role models and mentors for these students. And it's important for them to see people that look like themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ecker. Mr. Peter Morse, what changes, if any, do you think the district needs to make to ensure equal opportunity for students?
Well, I think first and foremost, one of the biggest things we need to do is get kids back in school. The reality is not being in school is hitting those kids at risk the most. They're the ones that have the highest missing of the role models, missing of the opportunities to interact with kids and parents that are available to help them. Programs like AVID are fantastic. Yes, that's fantastic. But we need to get them in school. How much is AVID helping a kid that's not in school right now? I don't think that's really helping them that much. That's why the most important thing for equity right now is getting our kids in school. If they're not in school, things aren't very equitable. It's being done at home. The unfortunate reality of life is some people have more than others. That's what public education is supposed to do. So we need to get them back in school. When we get them back in school, we then will have those mentors and role models, and we'll have those teachers that have the ability to go over and beyond and help those students. Right now, if that student doesn't know math and he's not in school, how's he doing? If his dad or mom hasn't gone there, or if they don't know somebody who knows that math. We can go into many things that are important about equity, and equity is incredibly important, and public education exists just for that. But first and foremost, we need to get them in school. Otherwise, equity doesn't exist.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Zone 1, question 3. How do you plan to ensure equity among all Albany schools? Ms. Clarice Law, if you would answer first.
Hi, equity among schools. You have a standard across the board where you work with the schools in between all the grade schools, all the middle schools, and all the high schools, and you have it continue on each level. Equity, one of the things they were talking about in wanting to have the high schools be on the same schedule was that part of the perks of that would be that the kids could go to different schools and take classes, which, as far as equity goes, they would be able to have all those things. Just looking at what some schools may have versus others, we need to look at the whole picture and have it be equal, have the admins of the buildings work together. And I think that's one thing, that's a good thing that's come out of COVID, is that I believe these guys are working closer together. Same with the middle school level. Also, along with the middle school level, that is an area that we need to work on as a district. That seems to be kind of the forgotten world in between grade school and high school. And it's a very important time for kids in moving into high school. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Law. Mr. Wilson, how do you plan to ensure equity among all Albany schools?
Equity or equality, I guess there's a little definition of each one. Equality is where everyone has the same opportunity. You may have different results, but everyone needs to have the same opportunities. And when we can, if we can lift people up and help them, they absolutely should. Equality is going to be important across all the different schools. And lost my train of thought. I guess I don't know enough about it to speak well of it, so I'm just going to stop it right there.
Thank you. Mr. Brooker, how do you plan to ensure equity among all Albany schools? I think you're muted, Mr. Brooker.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. The first thing we need to do is to find out what the inequities that we have in the different schools are now. Some of that we know, mobility rates, poverty, English as a second language are all factors that make it harder to provide the same level of education at all of our schools. When we have identified where the needs are, then we can go in and start working on those needs and help the students come up to a base level of knowledge so that they can continue their education. It is not just a matter of making sure everyone gets the same, but that everyone gets what they actually need. Thank you.
Thank you. Zone 2, question 3. What is the proper relationship between police and schools? Mr. Roger Nyquist, will you go first?
That's a great question. First, I want to thank both the students at South and West for helping to do this, and our hosts tonight. This has been a lot of fun. The proper relationship really is a community conversation. And first and foremost, schools need to be safe. I early on in my time with Lynn County, working with the juvenile director at the time, was a proponent, and we were able to put juvenile counselors in both high schools because that's where the kids were. I think we were the first in the state to do it, and now a lot of schools do that across Oregon. And so everybody deserves and needs to feel safe and have a safe learning environment. And we're at a place where we need that community conversation. And it's something that we really need to come to consensus on and rebuild our base as a community on this issue and move forward together.
Thank you, Mr. Nyquist. Mr. Sheppy, what is the proper relationship between police and schools?
The police and schools have a great relationship. They have the same goals of working together to protect our students. Trying to make it seem like you're either for the police or you're for the school districts is not the correct way to think about it. You can be for both. The way that we move forward is we need to build trust. And the way that you build trust is you allow opportunities for engagement. You don't remove police from anything, right? That doesn't build trust. But you also don't mandatory engagement. So for example, that I like to give, which is a little bit silly, is when my 2-year-old Theo interacts with Santa Claus. Some kids are terrified of Santa Claus. You don't force them to sit on their laps. Other kids enjoy it. What you do is you hold their hands and you let them engage at the level that they feel comfortable with. So first off, we need to support our police department. We need to support our schools, and they have a great working relationship. We need to make sure that the students that can engage, and the ones that feel uncomfortable can engage at the level that they feel most comfortable. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheppy. At large, question 3. When the questions get heated and arguments start, what do you do to keep people working together productively? Ms. Allison Ecker, if you would like to answer first.
So that's a great question. So when arguments get heated, I find that it's effective to usually just take a kind of a cool down break and maybe take a water break or a snack break and then just kind of give people the opportunity to collect their thoughts and cool their emotions down and then come back together. I know that sounds really elementary, but it does work. And also just to really validate other people's feelings. And a lot of times people's emotions start to get heated because they feel that they're not being heard. And so as soon as someone feels like they're being heard, then that can really bring things down a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peter Morse, when the questions get heated and arguments start, what do you do to keep people working together productively?
First and foremost, I would say stay off social media. We all need to learn to communicate in person. I love what Allison said about, stop talking and listen. Sit on your hands, listen to that person, make sure they understand that you're listening to them. We're not always going to agree with one another, and that's unfortunate, but it's also true. My wife and I don't always agree. I don't think that's abnormal. I think what's really important when you're in a heated argument is to each take some time, think about it, listen to the other person, give their opinion validity by the fact that they're seeing and that you're listening, and then tell them why you don't agree or why you might. Some of the best conversations, and unfortunately in our public right now, we're not doing that. We're not sitting down and actually communicate with one another. Having someone on the other side can sometimes make you have a better final decision because you're seeing it from another viewpoint. we all have certain shades through our viewpoint, through our experience. You know, where were you born? Who were you born with? You know, all those kind of things. Where did you go to college? Have you traveled overseas? You know, all those things shade our viewpoint. So we need to listen to one another and come to an agreement. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Danae Newton-Vasquez, when the questions get heated and arguments start, what do you do to keep people working together productively?
Yeah, I agree with Pete that social media is toxic and dangerous and at the expense of our kids. So one of the things that we can all come back to as servant leaders is our shared vision that this is supposed to be about our students. And whatever we do and however we talk to each other is going to impact those kids. And they're going to watch it and see it and learn from it. So I think pandemic wise, this is crucially important because none of us have been exempt from mistakes. I can attest that I have both experienced frustration and I have had people frustrated with me. And as a parent in Albany, I've been pretty happy with with how the district is keeping communication lines open. However, I think our little frustrations are heavier right now. They feel more urgent right now. And for all of us, from parents and educators and students to district leaders who are making these decisions that directly impact our kids. And I think significant issues feel almost unbearable in this pandemic, and there's a weight on all of us. And so remembering that we have a shared value, that we all care about our kids and we all want to see them be successful and happy and whole. And I think that collaboration, face-to-face, listening and hearing are all parts of that. And recognizing when we're not doing that is really, really important.
Thank you, Ms. Newton-Vasquez. At this point, we would like to invite our candidates to make a 90-second closing statement. Within this closing statement, an audience member suggested that you clarify whether or not you think following CDC guidelines rather than county guidelines is a good idea, and just within that general aspect. Mr. Brad Wilson, will you go first?
Oh, sure. Thank you. I'm Brad Wilson, and I'm running for school board in Zone 1. My goal is to provide transparency to the decisions that will shape board policies so that everyone can understand why a policy was adopted. All the students deserve the very best education that we can provide. It should be a goal of the school system to lift up each student to his or her potential and to help them make the most of their lives. I believe that with a strong school board's guidance and a solid curriculum, Albany's students can thrive. Albany's teachers and staff are excellent. They need the backing of the administration and the school board to ensure classroom conditions are conducive to maximum learning. We should always put students first. I'm Brad Wilson. I'm running for GAP School Board Zone 1, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brad Wilson. Mr. Frank Bricker, will you go next?
Sorry, having trouble with the mute button. As far as the question that was asked about CDC versus the county health departments, there shouldn't be a discrepancy. If we're looking at the science of what's safe for our students, I have a real concern if the county has a completely different answer than the CDC. Other than the fact that the CDC does change their guidance so often. If it comes to that, I would have to see what the differences are and why the differences are there. They're both agencies that are supposed to be helping us get through the pandemic. And if they're off in different directions, we need to determine why. We cannot, as a board, make our own decisions as to what is right and what is wrong in this area, because we're not medical experts. We're not immunologists, or that's pronounced. So we need to rely on the experts to help us get through this. And hopefully when next fall comes and we open the schools again, we will have solid information from both those organizations as to.
Time's up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Miss Clarice Law, will you go last?
Yes, I am running for Zone 1, as you guys know. I also didn't point out, I am a graduate, a student of GAPS, and so is my husband. Both our daughters are going through. We have a senior this year. I want to give back to the district that gave so much to us. I want to see it just improve and continue to improve. I want to listen, but I also want to hear, because I think that's part of the problem that's happened, is that we are admin, the district is listening to all the groups, but are they actually hearing? Are we being proactive by listening and hearing what they're saying? Being someone that had feet on the ground, boots on the ground, being in an elementary school, working with behavior, it was an eye-opening experience, and it was a very fulfilling experience, but it really brought to heart what the kids need and what we need to have in our school and what our teachers go through from every aspect. As far as the CDC and the Lynn County goes, there shouldn't be, I agree with Frank, there shouldn't be any discrepancy. But what happens sometimes is that Lynn County, the counties make a stricter interpretation is what I believe is happening. And but they're giving some leeway, and I believe some schools are using that leeway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Law. Now the candidates from Zone 2. Mr. Willard Sheppy, if you would first give your closing statements.
So Lynn County and the Albany school districts are working great together. I know that Roger is doing everything he can to support not only Albany schools, but all the schools in the district. I know that when I'm on the board, I'm going to look forward to working with him. But we need something more. We need to do something different. My experience as a mediator, working in the courts and working with families has helped me learn how to create solutions. My experience as a small business owner, utilizing technology to run an efficient and effective business, a business that build community trust around, lets me know what it's like to be a working family, because I am a working family. I believe that I'm the best candidate because I understand our students, and that I can help us move forward as quickly as possible by building consensus, help us see each other as humans again with common needs. As far as the Lynn County, I think we need to follow the Lynn County health guidelines. We don't need to do more or less, but we definitely need to follow the guidelines that are set out before us to protect the most vulnerable in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheppy. Mr. Nyquist, if you would now answer.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I could talk about the question here for 10 minutes, but I'll try to do it in 60 seconds. Let me be clear. Lynn County's only guidance is to follow the CDC, the Oregon Health Authority, and the ODE guidance. Our relationship is we talk with the school district about how they do that. Lynn County has no other written guidance than that. The problem is that the CDC guidance in some areas isn't followed by the Oregon Health Authority or the Oregon Department of Ed. There's lots of gray areas. There's some ambiguity. And you're right, Mr. Sheppy, I am doing everything I can, including talking with the governor tonight on this matter about 2 hours ago. That the state has got to get that squared away so it streamlines. And I, for one, think we need to be following the CDC guidance. Now, with that in closing, I will say I'm a candidate that brings a different approach and a different perspective. We've kept Lynn County open during this entire pandemic. I believe the taxpayers are paying us, in the case of GAPS, $100 million a year to provide services. And we need to do everything we can to provide all the services they need. This pandemic has created more needs by our citizens, not fewer. And we need to think outside the box and how we can continue to maintain and deliver those services. Thank you, and I'd ask for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Nyquist. Lastly, our at-large candidates' closing statements. Mr. Peter Morse, if you would answer first.
Sure. My name is Pete Morris, and I'm running for GAP school board position. I'm a family man, a local business owner, a Navy veteran, a volunteer coach and dentist, and I'm passionate about the importance of youth education. I want to fix what is not working. Unfortunately, some of our school district policies are not in the best interest of our students. I believe middle school students need to understand high school grading. I believe we need to save more money in the classroom and less money in administration. We should be hiring more teachers, not more administrators. I believe leadership requires leaders to be present in our schools. I believe transparency at the district is important to building trust in public education within our community. I believe education is the greatest equalizer for our youth. I want all our youth to achieve success. No one should be ignored or left behind because they are different. These kids represent our future, and as such, we need to help them learn all the important skills needed to lead successful lives. My name is Pete Morris, and I'm running for GAP School Board. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Now, about the guidelines for CDC in Lynn County. I think, unfortunately, here in the district, we're reading it a very conservative way. I think I would put more value on the idea of getting our kids back in class. So if I would not take out a whole class for a possible exposure.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, I agree with Pete in his quote by Horace Mann that education is the great equalizer. And I think just as an educator who's been in the trenches with students and teachers and parents and administrators to ensure our students are okay, I have seen what flaws have been exposed as a result of the pandemic. And I've also seen what has to be done to remedy that. I'm a mom who has felt desperate for my children to find a normal once again. And my life and passions have led me here to you today. I'm ready to serve as your school board director, as a passionate educator, as a mother, as a servant leader who knows how to put all kids first. And as your school board director, I will be serving as an educator, as a parent, and as an advocate for every student. And I believe in Albany for all.
Thank you, Ms. Newton-Vasquez and Mr. Morse. Would Allison Ecker give her closing statement?
Right. The pandemic has had a huge effect on our children and families and our communities, so much more than others. We're just beginning to come out of the worst and begin the healing process. Our children have just returned to schools after more than a year of being gone. Some of us have lost loved ones to COVID. Some of us have lost jobs during the pandemic. Some of us finished school and graduated during the pandemic. My family experienced all of this, and we fully understand the challenges facing our community on the path to recovery. I hope to bring my diverse perspective and advocacy skills to the school board so that we can think outside of the box about how to become more inclusive and best serve our students. And then to answer your question about following the CDC guidelines, I do feel like we need to follow the CDC guidelines. Throughout the pandemic, they've been sort of the national standard for providing guidance throughout the pandemic. And, you know, they're the scientific experts that everyone has looked to for expert advice and opinions regarding what the best strategies are during the pandemic. Lynn County Public Health, I feel, has not made their policies very transparent. I have tried to search for these myself on their website and they were not available. I feel like they need to be made available to the public, and they need to explain what the rationales are for why the guidelines differ from the CDC. Thank you for considering me to serve on the school board.
Thank you, Ms. Ecker, and thank you all who came and all the candidates. Just a reminder to everyone watching to vote and make sure your voice is heard, and knowing who you want to represent you. And thanks to Lynn County Unit of the League of Women Voters of Oregon for bringing this together and having this opportunity for our candidates to speak their voices. I think we're good.
Thank you. Good night.